Mr. Moriarty, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining. Perhaps we could try your mic. You are still muted.
I was muted. Hi, yes. Nice to see you. Good. How's this sound?
Great. I think this sounds very good. Thanks so much for joining us today. Okay, we are just finalizing some of the checking of the speakers and panelists, and we shall start soon. And thank you so much to all the attendees that are joining the call. Please bear with us. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just give us one more minute. We are still tracking some of the, Federico, I see. Let me just promote him to see him. Let's see. Federico, can you hear and see us? Can you open your camera and mic?
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, yes, cool, good. So I think we might be ready. Just okay, so colleagues, everyone, we are ready to start. So also signal to my colleagues. Thank you very much for joining the first day of the Multi-Stakeholder Thematic Webinars on the UN 2023 Water Conference. This event is being organized by UNDESA as the Secretariat of the conference, in collaboration and partnership with the co-hosts of the conference, the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Republic of Tajikistan. My name is Nayara Costa. I'm a Senior Sustainable Development Officer at the Division for Sustainable Development Goals at UNDESA. I'll be facilitating this call today with you, together with a team of very great colleagues that are supporting us behind the scenes. Before we start, I just want to make a few housekeeping announcements. This webinar is being recorded. The recording, the presentations, all relevant information that will be shared. It will also be made available on the events website. and it will also be shared with all the registered participants. For our speakers, please keep your cameras on when you're speaking, if at all possible, and please keep your microphones muted when you are not speaking. We will keep track of those as well. Let me ask all participants to use the Q&A box to ask questions or share your comments and suggestions. Please make sure that you indicate your name, the organization, the country when you are typing your question. We will be tracking those for the duration of the webinar. If you are on Facebook or Twitter, you can tag us using @SUSDev. This webinar is also being live streamed in our Facebook account. We had a record number of registrations. So if you disconnect or if you have any issues, you can always try to reconnect via the Facebook account. And my colleagues will be adding the link, sharing the link with you on the chat box. So we have a very busy agenda, and we would like just to have a quick overview. We'll start with a brief, we'll be starting by inviting Mr. Sultan Rahisoda. He's a special envoy of the President of Tajikistan on water affairs, and he is representing the co-hosts of the conference, and he will be delivering some opening remarks. After Mr. Rahisoda, we will be inviting a presentation from Mr. Federico Properzi from UN Water, and this presentation will be focused on the Water Action Agenda. Next, we will have two panels addressing two of the themes of the conference interactive dialogues, water for health and water for sustainable development. And the discussions will continue tomorrow. As you can see, we have this very full agenda, so please use the Q&A box for any comments and questions. Just before we start, just a little bit of a recap about the conference itself. The UN 2023 Water Conference, and I think we can go to the next slide perhaps, will be convened by the UN General Assembly from the 22nd to the 24th of March this year at the UN headquarters in New York. This is a very historical moment that will be bringing governments, the UN system, stakeholders from all sectors together to accelerate implementation, improve impact, and advance the broad challenges surrounding water. The conference website link will be available in the chat box. We really encourage participants to check the website regularly as it's updated on a daily basis. In terms of program, then moving to the next slide, the conference will consist of 6 plenaries where member states and relevant stakeholders will be announcing commitments, plans, actions, and also sharing best practices. There will be also 5 interactive dialogues that will be held in parallel with the plenary meetings, and those will be providing a space for substantive discussions as well. The themes of the interactive dialogues, they were decided by members of the General Assembly. They were agreed during the preparatory meeting held in October 22. And the themes of the interactive dialogues, they are also guiding the discussions of the webinars that we are having today and tomorrow. Additionally, there will be 4 special events that will be organized by stakeholders, by major groups together. And the idea of mobilizing sectors and then showcasing good practices and commitments. The side events as well, it's a major part, although informal part of the conference, and this is where governments, intergovernmental organizations, and civil society and stakeholders, they share their work, their practices, and their good practices and commitments. In terms of outcomes, the conference will result in a series of outcomes, including a summary of the proceedings, and most important, a set of voluntary commitments by governments and all stakeholders. And we will be hearing more about those commitments, the Water Action Agenda, in a bit. Just a a reminder in terms of participation of stakeholders. This webinar is targeting civil society and non-governmental stakeholders. Registration for this category is currently open until the 10th of February 2023. And each accredited organization can register up to 10 participants to attend the conference. Please do not wait, register as soon as you can, because registration is reviewed on a rolling basis and it takes a few days for registrations to be revised and approved. Please note that you need to register every single participant of your delegation. Every single one of them will need to have a profile and account on Indico, and every one of them need to be registered, populating their picture, passport, etc. information. So please do not take for granted.
Can you guys hear me?
Sorry, colleagues, can you mute the colleague? Thank you. So this is really, really important. I will be inviting everyone to take a look at the web page so you can check for updates related to registration of participants. If you have questions related to registration, please email water2023@un.org. Another reminder, accredited organizations, you can submit requests for side events until the 20th of January. So please read the instructions that are on the webpage, including the FAQ, and submit your proposals as soon as possible. And on the special events, the proposals is being finalized by the co-hosts, and the updates, when available, they will be posted at the conference webpage. So again, if you have questions about logistics, please use the Q&A box for them. My colleagues will be reviewing as we speak, and we'll be addressing as many questions as possible. However, since a lot of those questions might be already responded in the webpage, I really encourage you to take a look there, including the FAQs, before you post your question. So this was just a little bit of a recap about the conference and some of the key dates that are in front of us. And I think we should now move to our opening remarks. Dear colleagues, it is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Sultan Rahimzoda, Special Envoy of the President of Tajikistan on Water Affairs, for some opening remarks on behalf of the two co-hosts of the UN Water Conference, the Netherlands and Tajikistan. Mr. Rahimzoda, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nayara. Distinguished participants, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to welcome you on behalf of co-host Republic of Tajikistan and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, to welcome you in this multi-stakeholder thematic webinar dedicated to preparation for the very historical UN 2023 Water Conference and its important outcome, the Water Action Agenda. So, as you know, this conference will be the second ever United Nations conference on water and the first in almost 50 years, after the conference organized in Mar del Plata in 1977. The co-hosts of the conference, Republic of Tajikistan and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, are striving to make it a watershed moment for the world. The conference is a hope for many of us, but it is also our responsibility to use it accordingly and make it historical, not only in terms of the time dimension, but in terms of its results and its impact. This requires, of course, a fundamental shift in how we perceive water in today's fragile and multi-crisis world, and it is especially important because of the big pressure the water resources have been facing for the last decades. And it is worth to be mentioned that our action so far and our approach doing business as usual are not enough to achieve SDG 6 and other internationally agreed water-related goals. Due to some assessments, there is strong need to quadruple our efforts and our actions to achieve these goals. In this regard, the goal of the conference is that we all fundamentally understand, value, and manage water better and take concerted actions to achieve water-related goals and targets. The conference is really a good opportunity for all of us to make the change, and therefore we as co-hosts jointly with UNDESA and UN Water have been making every effort to make it a big success. We started our collaborative work toward this conference almost 2 years ago, and the first element we agreed between us basically in this process, in this collaborative journey, were the main principles we should follow in the process of the preparation and for the conference itself. The first is inclusivity, both in terms of the conference process and in terms of the results, leaving no one behind. The second one is cross-sectorality. The conference should mobilize all sectors to improve the way they manage and utilize water resources, basically going beyond the water box. And the third one is action-oriented. So the conference aims to lead the concrete results through concrete actions and plans on the ground. Based on these principles, basically we organized our preparatory work in very transparent and inclusive manner. We use a platform of different international regional events, including the Bonn Dialogue, the 9 World Water Forum, 4th Asia Pacific Water Summit, the Dushanbe Water Conference, of course, the Ocean Conference in Portugal, the COPs on climate in Glasgow in 2021, and last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, the platforms of World Water Weeks in Stockholm, in Singapore, in Cairo, and we use also the platform of the UN in New York and Geneva and many other platforms to raise the awareness about the conference, its importance, main goals and objectives. One of the key milestones in this way was the second Dushanbe Water Decade Conference in Tajikistan, which was built on the results of many of these events and developed the key messages to New York. I guess many of you were participating in the Dushanbe conference and made your contribution to the success of the conference and also to develop the key messages to New York. All these events, actions, and activities helped us to raise the awareness, to attract attention and engagement of the UN, member states, UN entities, financial institutions, NGOs, civil society organizations, major groups, including women, youth, indigenous people, local community, private sector, and others in preparation of this historical event in New York. And I think one of the great achievements of this collaborative work with different stakeholders, with you and the stakeholders, was selection of the themes of the interactive dialogues. Naira already mentioned, and you know that there was a round of consultation with member states and also stakeholders to discuss which themes should be selected for the interactive dialogues of the conference. And those were also discussed in the PGA meeting on 25th of October in New York, but the day before, PGA organized also the wide consultation with different stakeholders to discuss the themes, and finally that were finalized on the 25th of October. So taking this opportunity on behalf of co-hosts Tajikistan and the Netherlands, I would like to thank you all for being with us in this way, spreading information about the conference, raising the awareness about the conference and its importance, and supporting the preparatory process in different ways. But important thing for us co-hosts, and I guess indeed for the rest of the world, for you also, it is the outcomes of the conference. What it gives us, what kind of change it could make, and how it can unite the world around water and for water. So our vision for the conference is that it can set this change in motion and follow up to validate, track, and speed this with actions, commitments, and institutional reform at all levels across all scales, sectors, and interests. That's why a few days ago in UN, we had the press conference with participation of the Secretary General of the conference and the Secretary General on DESA about this conference, and we mentioned that the co-hosts therefore strive, to make the conference with bold commitments. So, and the boldness to put these commitments into actions, basically. We need commitments from government, civil society, the private sector, from all over the world, even from each of each of you and each of us and every individuals. To that end, during the Dushanbe conference, we launched the Water Action Agenda. Do you know about this? It is a platform that collects, displays, and follows these voluntary commitments. This will be one of the conference concrete outcomes next to the President of the General Assembly summary of the conference proceedings. So the Water Action Agenda is a way to gather the commitments of all stakeholders on Agenda 2030 and SDG 6 in particular, in which stakeholders can voluntarily indicate commitments for action to further strengthen the global water agenda. So the detailed information about the Water Action Agenda will be given by my dear colleague, Mr. Federico Proberzi from the UN Water. So, but I would like to highlight that Water Action Agenda is a means to an end, not an end in itself. So we want to make use of existing structures as much as possible, both in terms of implementation as well as monitoring and reporting. So, dear participants, today and tomorrow we will have an opportunity to widely discuss your engagement of different stakeholders in the conference, your contribution to the success of the conference and its Water Action Agenda. We, Tajikistan and the Netherlands, as co-hosts of the conference, are committed to cooperate with you and all interested parties and coordinate our actions and activities to make this conference really a watershed moment for the world. Once again, we appreciate our collaboration. We thank you very much for being with us and invite you also be with us during the conference and beyond for the implementation of those commitments we will have during the conference and before. Thank you very much once again being with us, and thank you very much for your attention. It will be my great pleasure also to answer to your question during this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the Special Envoy, Rahim Zoda and Sultan, for joining us this morning. And I want to publicly also recognize the role that the co-hosts have been having in pushing us, also the Secretariat and our partners, to break ground for this conference and also for creating new things and additional space. And we can see in the outcomes and the numbers that we continue to mobilize and the high level of interest from the different stakeholders to join the conference. So thank you very much again, Sultan, for joining us this morning, representing the two co-hosts of the conference, the Netherlands and Tajikistan. So let's now move to the next session, which will be the introduction to the Water Action Agenda. And it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Federico Proberzi, his Chief Technical Advisor of UN Water, and also our great partners in the planning and organization of this conference. So Federico, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nayara. Thank you very much. And first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, to all participants. And I would like to take this opportunity to really thank our co-hosts of the conference for their leadership, because it's really something historical that is happening now in March. So thanks so much to the governments of Tajikistan and the Netherlands. Also, I would like to thank our dear DESA colleagues for really bringing us all together all the time for these webinars, and also for really providing really the hardcore organization of the conference. Okay, so I would like to show you a couple of slides on the Water Action Agenda. Already, Mr. Rahim Zoda has already introduced it, so I would like to go a little bit further in the details. Next slide, please. And I would like to start from this very nice graphics, from this very nice drawing. And the Water Action Agenda, it really builds on the three principles of the conference. So the inclusiveness, action-oriented, and cross-sectoral. It builds, as Mr. Rahim Zoda said, it builds on what's already existing. For example, on the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, especially at the UN level, and it brings together the voluntary commitments from all stakeholders before the conference, during the conference, and after the conference, bring this collective vision as a means to an end, as Mr. Imsoda said, to achieve SDG 6 and all the internationally agreed water-related goals and targets by 2030. Next slide, please. The Water Action Agenda was launched in Dushanbe in June last year, and it is the main outcome of the conference. And it of course builds on the political momentum that we're living right now. It's quite amazing what is happening. And in this case, I would like to really highlight that water in Water Action Agenda means really big water. So it includes sanitation, includes disaster risk reduction, it includes IWRM. It's really all freshwater related issues. And the objective is really to mobilize action across countries, sectors, across stakeholder groups. And it builds on, as I said, on the foundation of a global acceleration framework. We want to learn, we are learning from other processes, what's already happening. Commitments processes are already happening. For example, we're looking at what's happening in the ocean sector, what's happening in energy, climate, but also in our own sector. Very few of our partners which are actually providing platforms for commitment and for mutual accountability, like Sanitation Water for All. Next slide, please. There are three main building blocks of the Water Action Agenda. The first one is the mobilization of the transformative commitments. It's about really encouraging, supporting all stakeholders to make those voluntary commitments. And by all stakeholders, I mean all of us, also as individuals. Two is the scaling up of implementation of the commitments in countries and across sectors. So of course, the bulk of the work needs to happen at the country level, and this is where the real difference can be found. And three, it's the follow-up and review of the conference, which will enable learning from what works, it will enable to review and measure progress, but also it will provide a platform for everybody, for all stakeholders to make new commitments, and so continues this virtuous cycle. Next slide, please. The voluntary commitments are very important because they're actually mentioned, they're part of the modalities resolution, the General Assembly resolution. So all stakeholders are really invited to make voluntary commitments. The platform to collect the commitments is managed by the UN Secretariat, by DESA, and it is custom built for the Water Action Agenda for the conference, because it's a once in a 46 years opportunity for us. But of course, it is part of the SDG acceleration action platforms, which is this bigger movement of acceleration of all the SDGs as part of the UN system. It is very important, all commitments from local to global, from small to big, they're all equally important. It's about bringing water up, bringing it in the agendas, in the political agenda. It's about making it more visible, making sure that politicians cannot ignore it. So everybody, we all have a role to play. Next slide, please. When it comes to the follow-up and review processes, and please note the plural here, there are three main tracks. One is an annual pivotal event on the margins of a high-level political forum in typically beginning of July in New York, where we can have a special event of a high-level political forum where we can show and discuss an analysis of water-related progress across sectors, but also linking it to the other SDGs. We can look at the commitments, the voluntary commitments. We can look at whether there are gaps, for example, in the action and what commitments have been made. And as I said, it's a platform to make new commitments, to really have this movement that continues. Second, there are other intergovernmental, actually, I would argue that the other sectors have intergovernmental fora. So it's about time we need to mainstream water in the other intergovernmental processes. We need to really have water in the climate negotiations, in the food systems discussion, and food security, for example, public health, social justice, human rights, environment, disaster risk reduction, and so on and so forth. Biodiversity, for example, is another good example. Unless we do that, we're not able to really achieve what we want, because major policy decisions at global level, at national level, for water, for fresh water, we're actually taken in intergovernmental space fora, which is not typically just for water. And then the third track, which is very important and which is very valuable, it's the water-related events. Like our community, the water community, we have many opportunities to meet, to create the community, to create the network, to discuss the messages, so that then we can bring them to the other two tracks. So just to mention some examples, we have, of course, the Dushanbe water process, we have the Stockholm Water Weeks, the World Water Forums, the Sanitation Water for All Ministers meetings, the IWA World Water Congresses, but I could go on, I could go on. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, but I would really want to highlight it. Everybody, all stakeholders have a role to play, and they're complementary. That's the beauty. We all can play, a role which really advances progress on all the water-related goals. Next slide, please. And this is my last one. I would really like to close with some main take-home messages. The first one is that the Water Action Agenda is our collective common vision. It's a means to an end to achieve all water-related goals and targets. 2, that all stakeholders have a role to play, and all commitments are equally important. And 3, the conference is not the end. It is the beginning of a process that will lead to the high-level political forum. This is according to the GA resolution, to the SDG summit, to the summit of the future, and so on and so forth, to the end of the decade for sure, and which will take us as a vision until 2030. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. Here are, of course, some key resources that also our DESA colleagues have shared. The conference website, the specific page on the Water Action Agenda, specifically the concept note and the FAQ, and the link to register your commitments. Please don't hesitate to register your commitments. For any questions, please do contact us on the main conference email address, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you very much. Nayara, over to you.
Thank you so very much, Federico, for all the insights and information on the Water Action Agenda. I hope colleagues will be, I'm sure they'll be very inspired. And also when we have the discussions on the panels, they will be able also to see how to make this really concrete. One thing I want to also reinforce is the important role that NGOs and stakeholders from the different sectors they have in also encouraging governments to bring very ambitious commitments to the water conference. So in the lead up to the conference, as you prepare your own commitment, we really count on your encouragement and work together with the different governments as well. Just before we start to the panel, just a few things. Colleagues, we are trying, and I'm really grateful to my colleagues, including even Michelle, who is trying to reply to as many questions related to logistics as possible. Please take a look at those that have been already replied. It might be your question as well, so we don't need to repeat the answers, and we will be doing our best to address those that are coming more frequently, and that can probably be the case for a great number of participants as well. And we will be using those questions to keep updating our FAQ and the information on the webpage. So let's now move to the substantive discussions as well. So we will start with our panels. The first panel will address the theme of the first interactive dialogue that will be held during the conference. The theme is Water for Health, Access to Wash, including the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation, SDGs 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and SDGs 1, 3, 4, 5, and 17. So again, if you have questions, participants, if you have questions or comments related to this theme or to the panel, please use the Q&A box, add your name, organization, country, as well as the panelist. If you want the question to be addressed to a specific panelist, please do mention this in the Q&A. Let me invite Dr. Aaron Solsberg. He's director of the Water Institute at the University of North Carolina, and he will be moderating this panel. Dr. Solsberg, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nira, and great to see so many friends and colleagues online. It's a wonderful event and really appreciate taking the time to talk about the Water Action Agenda. And just to highlight, UNC, the Water Institute, the University of North Carolina, we host the world's largest annual international conference focused directly on water and health. And this is our commitment to the Water Action Agenda. So it's kind of a great way to kick off this conversation. As Nira mentioned, I'll be moderating today's first session, which is focused on access to WASH, including the human right to safe drinking water and sanitation. And we're very privileged today to have three great speakers to kick us off. Sergio Campos, and if you guys can put your cameras on, that would be great. Sergio Campos, Chief of the Water and Sanitation Division at the Inter-American Development Bank. Ms. Vida Duty, the Country Director of IRC Ghana. And Patrick Moriarty, the CEO of IRC WASH, people who are probably familiar to many of you online. And again, just to remind everyone, please submit your questions on the Q&A function on the Zoom. And so maybe let's get right to it. And we'll try to do this really quickly so we have time for some questions and answers afterwards. So our goal for this session is to further explore how we might use the Water Action Agenda to accelerate action on the WASH and health-related SDGs. So maybe we should first start with a little bit about the challenges. And Vida, maybe we can start with you. What do you see are some of the main challenges that we need to address to accelerate progress to achieve the water and health-related SDGs? Perhaps you can give us one or two challenges that come to your mind.
Thank you, Aaron, and hello to everyone. We all say that water is life. And I want all of us to imagine this situation of a woman about to give birth and goes to the hospital and given a list of things to bring. And on that list is the number of gallons of water that she's supposed to bring to the hospital. This is the challenge that many people face. In sub-Saharan Africa, there are over 54% of healthcare facilities without water and sanitation services. And it is not only in healthcare facilities. We see that in many schools and in many communities. Why is it so? This has been a persistent challenge of inequalities in the distribution and access to water, sanitation and hygiene services. And if we can change this around, we can turn this around, then we should all embrace and respect the human rights to water, sanitation, and hygiene services. I think that would be the first step to addressing these inequalities and ensuring that the case of the woman I spoke about, many children and many communities, is resolved and everybody gets access to this basic human right, which is also fundamental to our existence. Thank you.
You're in mute, Aaron.
Thank you, Sergio. Yeah, absolutely. And access to basic services in these settings is critically important. Maybe Sergio, we'll turn to you for a couple of quick points. What do you see as some of these key challenges that need to be addressed?
Just to pick up on Vida's comments, for us, progress has been insufficient. There are more than 2/3 of Latin Americans that don't have adequate management, more than 1/3, that's 200 million, that don't have adequate access to hand washing or safe water. And the pandemic has proven that we were not prepared. And so for us, this is not a moment to celebrate. And many people that are not having access to these basic services important for health, education, gender, and poverty. For us, there are three challenges, three things that need to change. First, we need to increase the level of funding. Investing in Latin America, as in many other places in the world, is 0.35% of the GDP. We need more resources. Second, we need to embrace innovation. We see innovation, but innovation with purpose, not only digital, but social, in order to make changes faster, in a shorter period of time, at a lower cost. And last, we need a more holistic approach for the water resources. Latin America holds 1/3 of the freshwater resources of the world, key for our economic development and the well-being of our population. Climate change is challenging our food security, our hydropower generation, and water availability for human consumption. We need to realize and understand that we live under a new normal in which our protocols and our science are no longer relevant or as they were in the past. Swiss Re estimates that by 2050, climate change will account for $22 trillion for the economy. That's the equivalent of the GDP of all Europe and the equivalent of the GDP of the United States. We need a more holistic approach in which the decisions are taken in consultation with the stakeholders, with the beneficiaries, with the affected people for climate change, and decisions need to be done at the local level to address global solutions. So those are the three things that we need to change: increase the level of financing, mainstream innovation, and address climate change through a holistic approach. You're in mute.
It seems like they do that automatically for me. Thank you, Sergio, for taking that institutional and system-wide approach, which is critically important here. Patrick, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of key challenges that we need to address?
Yeah, thanks very much, Aaron. And I'm just I think we have two more panelists who are on your slide and who are in the event, and there are some messages in the chat about them. So I'm not sure if you might want to have a quick look at that. But no, I mean, I can only agree with Sergio and Vaida. And maybe, yeah, adding on a little bit, I think the biggest challenge, I think we face two big challenges. And I think the biggest is actually just to make people care more about water, and I think particularly to take the opportunity of the conference to raise it up the political agenda. And the sort of reforms that Sergio was just talking about that are needed if we're going to deliver on the vision of SDG 6 is only going to be achieved when priorities given and that broad vision is set at the level of a head of state or a head of government. And the second, and I think it relates, it's how we deliver this first, is that we as a water community need to look outward. We need to spend less time talking to ourselves. We need to spend more time talking to and connecting with all the other sectors with which water interacts and to which water is crucial and whose engagement and interest is crucial to us in water. Water's like air. It's a flux. It flows to everything. It flows to us, our ecosystems, our economies. It can't ever be contained in one ministry or in one sector. And ensuring that it's given priority and accounted for in every other sector to which it's relevant, be that health, particularly important for this theme, but equally education or industry, economic development, climate, requires a broad and unified vision and strong leadership, particularly at the national level and the highest level of political leadership. So for me, that's actually the change we're looking for most at the moment. Get water up the political agenda, and we as a water community look outwards and make those connections to other sectors. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick, for raising that. Obviously, it's critically important, so I appreciate that. Three great points from all of our speakers. Sergio, in your opinion, we've got these challenges now in front of us. How can we best use this UN 2023 water conference, and in particular the water action agenda, to advance actions that would address these challenges?
I think that, as mentioned in the previous session, I think that the UN should address all the challenges that the sector faces from water and sanitation. That water is important for health, for education, for gender equality, for poverty reduction. I think that we need to understand that if we not move forward in the SDG 6, we won't be able to attain the other goals. We won't be able to leave poverty. I mean, what else more basic than water and sanitation? So I think this conference needs to make sure that everybody, every country, every public utility, every private sector, every stakeholder understand that SDG 6 is key for all the other goals, and it's one of the most important ones. I think that we should also empower public utilities. I think that the world is heavily urbanized, 80%, 70%. Public utilities hold staff, resources, they have a mandate, they have a knowledge, and they can be key transformative agents in a holistic approach. I think that we should empower them, we should give them good governance, autonomy, so that they can address the issues. And finally, I think as a world, we should make a commitment to bridge the gap for the rural sector. I think it's attainable within the SDG 6 timeframe by 2030. I think that financing needs to go there, solutions need to be appropriate. And I think that we should move more in those three fronts, no? I mean, making sure that it's well understood the importance of the SDG 6, empowering utilities and closing the gap for the rural sector.
Yes, Sergio, I just want to take that point just a little bit further, because I think you're exactly right. We have to get the right people to the table. And some of those local actors are utilities, even our sanitation workers, people who are out in the field doing the work. We need to find a way to bring them into this event and get their voices and their challenges and problems heard. I absolutely agree with that. It's a wonderful point. Vida,
Mr. Stolzberg, to interrupt. It's just that we have two other panelists that have, I just want to make sure that you have them on your.
We do. I do not have them on my agenda.
I'm really sorry. Maybe colleagues, can we post the PPT with the latest, and perhaps there was a miscommunication on our side. So just want to make sure that Ms. Malik and Ms. Chakpa, they also can contribute to the conversation. Just, okay, so you have them here. We have been trying to post on the chat, but the chat is quite active.
Okay, I apologize. This was must have been a change overnight that I wasn't aware of. I apologize to our two guests, and maybe then it really doesn't give us much time to go into. We've got a very compressed schedule here, so maybe Serene, I'll turn to you. You've heard the two questions so far. You know, how do you see us using this 2023 event to address some of the key challenges that we have around water and health? And then I'll turn to Priscilla as soon as we're done. And apologies for not bringing you in immediately.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Priscilla Chapla on behalf of Women's Major Group. Just to say that, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, just to say that most of the challenges I see when we talk about the issues of water, sanitation and hygiene, and the inclusion of women, most of the time is just about lip service. It's just about saying, okay, yes, we have to bring women on board. But in reality, women are not, the gender issues are not really captured in policies, in funding, both at the national and at the global level when it comes to issues of water and sanitation. And for us at the national level, this is a huge challenge, and coming particularly from Africa, I heard when Vida spoke about the inclusion of gender in water and sanitation. The issues of funding is a huge challenge. The issues of women in leadership, let's look at, take some kind of census for the whole world. Particularly in Africa, how many women are actually in leadership when it comes to the issues of the water sector? We have very few, and this is a huge challenge. And so for us, for me, and of course for the majority of the African women, we feel that the issues of gender mainstreaming is just a matter of saying, okay, let us always talk about gender mainstreaming, but the political will is not there because there is no lack of fund. There's lack of funding. There is really not inclusive policies. And so we need to look at the issues of bottom-up approach, but also the issues of leadership. These are the challenges that we have. And unless we place women at the center of this, or gender issues at the center of water and sanitation, we will still have that huge gap which we are talking about here. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. And maybe we'll jump to Serene. And then Serene, maybe you could also tell us as well, what are your commitments and what are you thinking that you'll be able to commit to this water action agenda going forward?
Thank you very much, Aaron. Hi, everyone, and no worries about the agenda. This is my second time back on this panel for water and health. The first one was in Stockholm last year. And we gave a detailed account, really raw and unfiltered, of the health outcomes on women, girls in particular, and children. And I remember Henk challenged us and said, you've brought the problems, but what are the solutions? I need solutions moving forward. And I know Sultan was there with us. Aaron, after much consultation and really looking at this, reviewing the data, listening to people, looking at the various contexts in which we operate, we have come to the strong conclusion, Aaron, that these commitments will only be fulfilled through law, that law is key in the implementation and in the fulfillment of these commitments. That would be the best way for the leaders to demonstrate their political will, to demonstrate that they're actually taking these issues seriously. A report was done in December which looked at the legal environment of water and sanitation, and it was damning. It was damning in the sense that, yes, countries did all sign or agree to the constructive rights, but when it came down to the implementation of national laws in countries and strengthening the institutions that are supposed to implement them, we were falling very behind. So it was a very still progressive realization of rights. Laws are how we know whether these commitments are going to be translated into action. Federico gave us those 3 pillars. They're all underpinned by law. And by that, I do not mean just policy. Policy, I always say, is just a statement of intent. Law is when we really know that things have been put into place. And that, in my opinion, is the way forward. In terms of our commitments of civil society organizations, I think as CSOs, we have always been very good in terms of keeping up our commitments. We will continue to advocate for the right to water and sanitation to ensure that it permeates the systems, the laws, the sense and the spirit of a country and of the sector, and continue our role as supporting the various partners, but also putting a lot more pressure, taking a look at, are these laws justiciable? You know, can people hold duty bearers to account? Can leaders be held accountable? So I think this is what I wanted to share. And I don't know if Henk is listening, but I hope that this is a good starting solution. Thank you.
No, Serena, I appreciate that, and especially the focus on national governments having to come to the table with very specific commitments on how they will advance this agenda, and by embracing those commitments in law. I think that is a very, very good point. Patrick, what do you see as a major commitment that your IRC is willing to make, so to speak, to this water action agenda?
Thanks, Aaron. So in fact, over the last couple of years, IRC and together with our partners in the US-based NGO Water for People have created an alliance, and I think quite unusually for a very fragmented sector, developed a joint strategy that we call Destination 2030, and that we intend to put that entire strategy and all the commitments that are locked up into it as our commitment to the agenda, and that the strategy is very ambitious. It stretches across 15 countries. It has an aim of bringing sustainable water and sanitation to 20 million people within those countries, in the areas, the districts and the towns that we work in, but also to do so in a way, by contribution, by working with others, by networking, that contributes to at least another 200 million people being served, and to raising $500 million+ to achieve that. And I think our strategy, beginning to fill in the forms, our strategy addresses multiple elements: direct investments, capacity building, research and innovation, technical assistance, advocacy and influencing, all delivered in those local areas, but also engaging with national government. And I think that the engagement behind national government and in the discussions that we have in our space, in NGO space, in research and learning organization space, I think it's great that we all make commitments. And that's our big picture one. But of course, each of those commitment will be tailored in each of those 15 countries to the commitments being made by national government. And I think that, you know, this is the power of the conference and I think that all of us should be doing everything we can to mobilize governments that we support to bring, as you were saying, strong binding commitments to the table, and we can then support them. So we have that strategy, but we're now fine-tuning it to align with the strategies of the countries and the towns and the districts that we're supporting.
Nope, that's great to hear, and it's a great example. I appreciate that. Sergio, you know, I know the Inter-American Development Bank has been very active in this process as well as many others. I mean, what do you see as some of the major commitments that we can bring towards this water action agenda?
Thank you, Aaron. We're working, among many other things, in 4 commitments. We're organizing a session on mainstreaming innovation, strengthening the ecosystems for innovation, rewarding innovative solutions that are taking place already in public utilities, bringing innovation from other countries and from other sectors. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and empowering and strengthening the entrepreneurships and the youth entrepreneurship to address the challenges that we have. We're also collaborating in transboundary waters, led by UNESE. 60% of the fresh water in Latin America is in shared basins. We need better institutions, we need more data, we need better projects, and we need a better institutional framework. If we want to talk about water security, we need to address transboundary waters. Then we're working on a call to action to bridge the gap for the rural sector. We believe in a resilient, productive, and healthy rural sector. The rural communities are the gatekeepers of our water resources. They should also be empowered and strengthened. And finally, we're supporting the Gender Coalition led by the Asian Development Bank.
So Sergio, and I'm not going to pick on you, but I am going to pick on our next set of speakers as we go through this. What do you see as some, you know, what? And I'll turn to you, Vida. What specifically can we accomplish through this water action agenda? Do you have a commitment to this agenda that you think will really advance access to some of those marginalized communities that you're really focusing on?
Well, I think that we've been committing as a sector, but usually when we go out to work, we work in diverse ways. So we should commit to look at the delivery of WASH with a system lens and appreciate the role of each other. We can only achieve more if we align our work all towards a common goal and a common vision. So we should go breaking away from our silos and work towards supporting each other. In Ghana, IRC Ghana, in the delivery of our program, I've been working with districts and aligning partnership with other stakeholders towards implementation of a commonly agreed master plan and vision. We've seen this approach as something that is working quite well. Since 2017, we supported the Stephen North district, and it's one of the districts in the country that is almost at reaching full coverage of water services in schools, in communities, and everywhere. At the moment, we've documented a lesson, and we are working with government to scale it up in regions and in other parts. We commit to continue to work with the government of Ghana to document all the innovative approaches that are being implemented in the country to inform the scale up, so that Ghana will be possibly one of the first countries to achieve universal water services by 2030, as well as bringing all the lessons into the global dialogue and the engagement on how we can accelerate progress towards universal water services in the commitment that we make. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's great. And, you know, Priscilla and Serena, I'm going to ask you to the same question about what commitment you think your organizations might be able to make to the conference. And Serena, you've already given us a little bit of a highlight, so I'll turn to Priscilla first. And then I'll come to some of the questions that we've seen in the Q&A function. And again, if you're addressing it to a particular individual, let me know in the Q&A. Priscilla, what kind of commitment do you think you'll be able to make towards the Water Action Agenda?
Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. For us, as civil society organizations, and I'm happy that Serena is here, we have African Network on Water and Sanitation. And at the national levels, we have several networks of civil society that are working on water and sanitation. At the moment, we're in partnership and we're coordinating with the various government at the national and state levels in our various continents, and we are planning towards this. But as our organization, we are partnering with a lot of organizations from the global north, also from the global south, to be able to bring the voices of especially the civil society and the women organizations, who most of the times are being neglected and nobody talks about them, especially the grassroots organizations who are doing incredible work and yet they are not being recognized. So we are documenting the voices of most of these organizations and women groups that are doing incredible work at the grassroots level. And we strongly believe that when we are able to showcase this to the global world, especially at the conference, people will see that a lot of grassroots women organizations, a lot of communities are taking actions to address the issues of water and sanitation. In particular, sanitation, which is most of the times being neglected. When we talk so much about water, we tend to, in most cases, neglect the issues of sanitation and hygiene. So we are looking at the issues of things like menstrual hygiene. How do you address that? The dropout of the young girls from schools because of menstrual, because of menses, which is, of course, a fundamental human right. And of course, no girl child should be dropped out of school because she's menstruating. These are the kind of campaigns that we are bringing up. And we are working with the various governments in Nigeria, where I come from. We are working with the Federal Minister of Water Resources. We are working with the Federal Minister of Women Affairs. We are working with the Federal Minister of Environment to address those challenges. And collectively, we are looking at different solutions of how we can bring all those small actions, because we believe that when we think globally, we must act locally. And so those actions at the local level must be able to translate to the global level. But specifically the issues of sanitation and hygiene, which the girl child faces a lot, and the number of dropout of girls is very high. In our continent, we have a lot of IDPs, internally displaced persons. Nobody is talking about how the hygiene aspect of it is being affected. So we're looking at all those things from a holistic perspective. We're looking at inclusion. And so we are doing a study called Gender and Social Inclusion, Social Context Analysis. And this study with the GPAP, that is Global Plastic Partnership Action, we are looking at how can we bring this study to be showcased at the global level, so that people begin to understand when we talk about inclusion, we are not just talking about women, but we are talking about people with disabilities. We're talking about people who are displaced. We're talking about people who are living with HIV/AIDS. We are talking about people, several people the age. How do we bring them into context when we refer to the issues of water and sanitation in this context? Thank you.
Priscilla, thank you very much for raising this point. I know this is something, and I saw Patrick shaking his head vigorously, right? These holistic, system-wide approaches to improving health is critically important. And I think, this is something we don't talk enough about this water action agenda. This is really an opportunity for us to build those bridges with those other sectors and ensure that they're at the table. And as we begin to develop these partnerships as part of this water action agenda, we've got to weave those new partners into this. We've got to bring them into these discussions. And so I appreciate you making that point, Priscilla, and it's going to be critically important for us to achieving the goals and objectives that we have around water and health. Serene, one of the questions that's also come up is around urban issues and urban challenges around water quality and things like that. I mean, do you see us being able to make some progress with some of the commitments to the action agenda around urban water quality as well? And what else do you see us being able to bring to the table for the action agenda?
Yeah, I think it's at least for Africa, where there is rapid urbanization, we are seeing a number of programs supported by development partners that are trying to accelerate WASH in urban settings. I think the advantage here, the positive side of looking at things, is that urban settings are generally low-hanging fruits. Civil society organizations, whether government, private sector, were fairly well organized within these urban centers. And that means that the opportunity for multi-stakeholder platforms, the opportunity for convening are there, existent, vibrant, and moving. So this is really something that we should continue building on. We've seen the discourse change over the past decade, where, at least from the civil society perspective, we antagonize less and have moved all of us more towards collaborative type of behaviors. So moving forward, I think having doors of opportunity open like that, having the platforms that have already been set up, having WASH in the national discourse can only be an adequate enabling environment to see acceleration within the urban centers. Sorry, Aaron, I missed the second question. I got carried away with the first one.
No, that's good. That's really helpful and good to hear. There was another question around, and maybe this might go to Sergio or to Vida, because you both have talked a little bit about this, around the impacts of climate variability and change on different land use patterns and deforestation and the impact that might have on water resources and drinking water quality. Do you see us being able to make any commitments around those issues that might help advance action around the integrated nature of the WASH challenge?
I can go first. I mean, I think that we should definitely make a commitment. The International Panel of Climate Change concludes that some of the effects that we're seeing are irreversible. Most of the protocols that we used to have, the command and control type of system for the water resources, are no longer relevant. We need to have a more innovative governance in which the decisions between the food producers, the energy producers, and water for human consumption are done in a more dynamic, using better technology, remote sensing, digital information, so that they the ones that are going to be impacted can make those decisions. We need to reverse that type of governance for a more holistic approach, and it needs to be done at a local level. It can no longer be done at the central government level or at the state level.
Yeah, I'll add that we're at risk of losing a lot of ground here, I think, as extreme weather events begin to kick in and we don't have proper stormwater control, especially in urban environments, or our on-site systems are not resilient enough to handle some of these weather conditions and what that might mean for local drinking water in rural communities. So I think there's some real challenges there. Vida, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I couldn't agree more to the earlier submissions. We are seeing changes in the climate situation, and that is also impacting on a lot of things, flooding, unexplained flooding, and also washed into water bodies. And so it affects those who still rely on streams, as well as even the cost for treating the water after the rains have subsided. We're also seeing situations where seasonality of water services is getting intensified, and many more challenges related to the climate variability. We cannot talk about water without protecting the sources. And so it is very important that as we commit to manage the water services well, we are also committing to protect the sources. And we are also committing to ensure that we work together with other sectors. We cannot achieve that alone. So we have to expand to connect with the other sectors responsible for the water resource management, for the climate issues in our countries. We need to commit to work closely with others that share the same source with us, for energy, for transport, for those of us in areas where we mine water resource, we mine natural resources. So that whole connection with other sectors is very critical if we would be able to look at the issues of the impact on climate variability on the sustenance of the water services that we have.
Great. We have one more minute. Patrick, I'm going to throw this one to you because I think it's an important question, but I also know this is, you know, your heart, bread and butter. Where's hygiene? How do we make sure hygiene is part of this process and is properly brought into these discussions around water and health?
I think it's a great question, Aaron, but you know, I've really enjoyed this discussion. I've enjoyed reading the comments, but maybe I'm going back to my original point. And I know in a way it seems like a very high level point and there's so much really specific, great stuff coming out of this. But the reality is all these points that we are making are points we've been making to each other for the past 10, 15, 20 years. We know, we in the sector get this, we know the importance of this. And so what's missing? What is it that we're not getting? What we're not getting is that high level political buy-in. And frankly, it's the same answer for sanitation as it is for water. Yes, we have to make the links. Yes, we have to help folks who, and I'm not talking about us on this panel or in this audience. I'm talking about the people we don't talk to, the mayors, the local politicians, the members of parliament, the presidents, their advisors. Those are the people who we have to get to understand how fundamental sanitation is to development, to human rights, to creating a modern state. I often use the example of Swachh Bharat in India as really what we should be aiming to stimulate all around the world. You know, a president who on a day of national importance stands up and says, I'm committing myself to making the country clean. And we can all argue about to what extent it's achieved. We know reality is messy, but that sort of political leadership, that's the magic. That's what we should be looking for. That's what we should be using New York for. So.
No, thank you, Patrick. And look, we've run out of time, and I think that's a great point to close out on. Look, at the end of the day, we need governments at all levels to commit to making the steps that are going to be necessary to implement this agenda. I really want to thank all of our speakers, Patrick, Sergio, Vida, Serene, and Priscilla. I really apologize for not knowing that you were part of our panel to begin with, but it was obviously a great discussion. We could do this for a lot longer, but hopefully it gives everybody a sense of the types of commitments and the type of things we can be thinking about as we start looking to contribute to this water action agenda in support of the UN 2023 Water Conference. So thank you, everyone. Naira, back to you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Solsberg, for this amazing moderation, and apologies again for the miscommunication on our side. Thanks so much for adjusting so quickly. Special apologies to Ms. Achakpa and Ms. Malik, and special thanks to all the panelists and to the contributions of participants. Participants, you know, you can go to the reactions and also express your love to our panelists as well. So thank you so very much for that. Colleagues, we are receiving, the last time I checked, we had more than 120 questions coming through, several of them on logistics, and my colleagues are trying their best to reply to many of them, and we may address some of those tomorrow. As we start the second day, we'll try to address those that are coming more frequently as well. So clarify to everyone. Just one link that I'll be asking my colleagues to share again. If you could share the participate link. We are focusing very much on the NGOs because this webinar is targeting the non-governmental organizations and non-governmental stakeholders in general. So if you belong to a government, or if you represent other sectors, the UN or an IGO or the media, you will have information posted for your sector. If you are a government, I really recommend that you reach out to your mission. If you are a mission, you will see the contacts of our colleagues to reach out to as well. Also, colleagues, if some information is already not available, this means that the process is being established. Once the questions or once the process is clarified, the details will be posted online. So really, thank you so very much for all the questions. So let's move to panel 2. The second panel will address the theme of the second interactive dialogue to be held during the conference, water for sustainable development, valuing water, energy, food nexus, and sustainable economic and urban development. SDGs 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and SDGs 2, 8, 9, 11, and 12. Again, colleagues, you are making a great use of the Q&A box. Please continue to do so for this panel. Make sure that you add your name, organization, country, and also if you have a panelist that you would like to respond to. Let me now invite Ms. Sasha Gabizon. She's Director of WECF, and she will be moderating this panel. Sasha, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nayara Costa and you and Dessa, and of course the co-host from Tajikistan and the Netherlands for organizing this very interesting discussion. And I'm very pleased that I'm allowed to moderate this next theme on water for sustainable development. And of course, we will focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. We're almost halfway through, and we know that water is essential for almost all of the Sustainable Development Goals. But we also know there's often competition between sectors, between building and energy and agriculture and housing and nature, and that the situation is not getting easier with climate change. So I'm super pleased to introduce to you our speakers and panelists today. We have Neil Dodd, Director of Aquafed. I have seen you're here. Great that you're on board. We have Elisa Weilancourt of the Global Youth Movement for Water, who's also here. Great that you could make it. I haven't seen Patrick Frick of the Global Commons Alliance. Patrick, are you on board?
Absolutely on board. Hello, Sasha.
Oh, excellent. Great. Then we have Monica Altamirano, who is the Director of the Climate Impact for Water Equity. I have seen you. Great that you're here. And last but not least, from the major group Children and Youth, we have Temple Oraiki, who is the Director of WASH VLD. So without much ado, you will each get 45 minutes to look at 2 of the questions I'm going to pose to you. And then we'll do a second round where I would really like you to focus on what can we commit for the Water Action Agenda on this topic of water for sustainable development. But let's start with the first 2 questions. What I would like to know from you, and we'll start with Neil, is what are fundamental changes we need to consider? How can we accelerate progress? We just heard from the previous session that we have been looking at the challenges for the last 20, maybe more years, 30, 40 years. We're halfway through the Sustainable Development Agenda. How do we accelerate? What is needed? What is fundamental change we need? And how can we best enable action and changes and link it really to the UN 2030 Water Conference, which is upcoming in March? So Neil, let me give you the floor. and Neil Dodds, Director of AgraFed. And please also introduce your network. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Sasha. And hi, everyone. I hope you're all well. So AgraFed is the Association or Federation of Private Water Operators, International Federation of Private Water Operators. We work on invitation from utilities or the public authority to run the utility service and perhaps build new plants if necessary. But just to be clear, it is under contract from a public authority who makes the important decisions on things like tariffs and service delivery. Okay, so it's not the private operator that makes those types of decisions. This is very interesting questions or set of questions we've been asked, particularly in the context of what we heard before. I think it was Patrick or someone said we need a system-wide approach to health. Might have been Serene, actually. And in terms of sustainable economic and urban development, which is particular interest of us, I think we need a system-wide approach to sustainable development in this sector as well. And what I mean by that is that sometimes water is very much seen as a charity and has a charity mindset, in the sense that we absolutely need the charities that work within the sector, but we will not solve our issues and will not reach our targets if we continue to just have that kind of mentality whereby we are a charity and it's a bottomless pit. This sector has to stand up for itself and stand up on its own 2 feet. And by that, I mean, particularly in developing countries, we shouldn't be seeing them as donors and recipients of donors and charity. We should be teaching or helping them and financing them to sustain themselves. Okay, and that's what they want in the developing world. They, countries and people in the developing countries and lower middle income countries are saying, do not treat us like a charity. Help us get on our own 2 feet and be sustainable in the long term. So the implications for that mean that, for example, on financing, we need to look at how we finance in a different way, and things such as, instead of building more and new flashy kit, shift the balance to operation and maintenance. Again, I'm talking about utilities in particular. All right. Sometimes more CapEx is not what's required. Actually, you need to maintain what already exists. Operation and maintenance for me also actually means upskilling and building capacity amongst the people that work in the utilities. And by that, we are talking about addressing equality issues, women and youth in particular. Yeah, and we'll hear from those groups today. But so it's a fundamental change, I think, is getting out of that mindset of whereby the water sector is needy and it needs to be more self-sufficient and have a better business model. Now, I know that the word business model might freak a lot of people out, and I'm not suggesting the whole sector becomes a business. What I'm saying is that you have that mentality whereby you can only spend what you earn, okay, and break even. So that's the first one. The second one, I think, a fundamental change is freedom of local choice, and I think it's actually linked to what I just said. Freedom of local organization and choice, and allowing local municipalities and regional decision makers to make their own very important decisions. I have seen brilliant schemes set up, financing schemes set up by some of the international donors, and I've been tearing my hair out, not understanding why the potential recipients of those finance models have not said yes. But I've worked out over time that, because it bypasses perhaps the central government sometimes, and it takes financing right to where it's really needed. I don't know how you solve that problem, but that's a fundamental change that needs to happen, because that will make a big difference. Sasha, you wanted me to answer the second question as well. Did you, about the conference itself, or shall I stop there?
Yeah, so the question, well, if you want, you can take a few more minutes. You're on 4 minutes, so 30 seconds. How to leverage the conference?
Yeah.
You need it. So
thank you. Yes, correct. So I think I'd like the conference to have a really tight focus, actually. And I hope we get to this point. And I know the organizers are really trying in the way they're trying to funnel down the side events proposals, and same with the special events as well. But we need to focus on a few things a lot better. Obviously, being a utilities man and who I represent, a big issue, I think, is circular economies. We need to really put them into place. These are something, again, I think it was Patrick that said we've been talking about the same things for a long time. When will that day come where we actually put circular economy policies in place in every country, let alone starting to implement them, because we're way behind? But that will solve a lot of issues. And the other issue is that I want the conference to really solve once and for all is inequality. Again, it was mentioned in the previous session. And again, being a utilities man, I want to see the conference be the acceleration point of bringing up workforces that in the utilities sector where women are, 50%, men 50%, and the youth particularly. I don't know, Elisa will articulate this a lot better in a second, but the youth and young professionals are really understood and respected and are given the opportunities that they want, not the opportunities that employers who've been in the job a long time think that they need. So there needs to be a massive listening exercise, a listening moment to what young people, how actually they perceive their careers and how they want to interact with the sector. And they don't want a 25-year career in a utility necessarily. They want to do their own startups and come in and out, right? We have to galvanize that.
Thank you.
That's what I'd like. Thank you.
Super. So circular economy, inclusion, equality, young people, women on board. Thank you so much for that. I have lots of questions to ask you, but because I do think indeed that this issue of circular economy needs also more discussion, and it's super interesting. As I understand, it also means for water operators. I've seen some water operators working with, for example, farmers to reduce pollution of the groundwater so that they can reduce also costs for the water operators. So very interesting cooperations also for a circular economy model in the water sector, working with other sectors. We can come back to that later because we have a lot of panelists, and we have afterwards time for questions and comments. Thank you, Neil. Let's now go to Elisa Weilencourt. Elisa, you also have your 45 minutes, and I have the same two questions for you. Fundamental changes, what is needed, and how can we leverage really on the water conference? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm here to represent the International Secretariat for Water, but also give my voice to the over 500 organizations that are part of the Global Youth Movement for Water and the Butterfly Effects Civil Society Network. To start off, I'd like to speak a little bit about the valuing water aspect of this theme. So I think the values that people hold about water are to a large extent intangible. This value cannot be seen, touched, or directly measured, and this is not, it's seldomly spoken about. I think that we need a transition that will include all relevant stakeholders, that will take into account the multiple and diverse values of water to different groups and interested in all decisions affecting water. We are spending trillions to look for water on Moon and Mars, but yet we often take water for granted here on Earth. So to achieve water for development, I think there's three main points. We must recognize water as a common good that must be managed democratically and collectively. We must take measures to ensure equitable representation of women, youth, and Indigenous people in effective governance mechanisms. And we must ensure that strong and transparent financial commitments are reaching the most vulnerable and marginalized population. To answer a little bit about your second question about what is the opportunity that we have here regarding this conference, and how can this conference be best leveraged? To answer this, I'd like us to take a step back, and I'd actually like to ask a question to you. So how will we make it different this time around? So as most of you know, the last UN conference was almost nearly 50 years ago. I, for myself, was not born during when this conference came around, but it was held in Mar del Plata in 1977. And this conference was said that this was a benchmark in the area of water development and management, but it was said that two areas could have received additional attention: financial arrangements and the modalities of the implementation of the Mar del Plata Action Plan. So as we are here to speak about the Water Action Agenda, two questions came to mind. First, how can this action agenda be different than the action plan that was proposed during the last UN conference almost 50 years ago? How many of us here have even read the action plan that was presented 50 years ago, or that even know what was on this action plan? I was actually surprised myself to see that this action plan, there are so many elements that were presented that have been mentioned in the past months as a priority for the water action agenda, regarding sharing of data, water and agriculture, policy, planning, management, education, and the list goes on. How can we make sure that together here today, that how can we make sure that when we all convene again in 50 years or so, well, let's hope earlier than that, we are not again copy pasting commitments that we've all taken before, but that we are speaking about how we've achieved and implemented these commitments. And my second point is how can we keep each other accountable for these actions? I think through this framework, through this water action agenda, we must create a framework for consultation, dialogue, knowledge, sharing between all relevant groups, including women and youth, to strengthen collaboration and joint ownership. I think this is a unique opportunity to foster cooperation amongst organizations, sectors, continents, countries, and generations to use water as a vector for change. And obviously the youth are there. We are here to listen, but we are most importantly here to collaborate with all of you. And I'll be coming around a little bit more after during the third question to present what we are doing, already, what we are committing to, and what we will be there in New York, and we're ready to work with all of you to make all of this happen.
Thank you so much, Elisa. You're within your time, and I really like your approach of this idea that we really need to have everybody on board, specifically youth, women, and indigenous peoples, and they need to be really having a say in consultations on how we govern water as a common good. I think that's very important. I know it is already present in some of the UN conventions and resolutions, and that some regions have done also really great transboundary cooperation in this area. But how can we really make this the standard and the norm, and really make sure that we have this inclusive approach, and that it's not just those with the biggest pockets who get most access to water resources. So very important. Thank you for that. We come back for a second round. So continue thinking about the commitments. You already started that discussion. But let me first go to the other speakers. So we have Patrick Frick of the Global Commons Alliance. Patrick, the same two questions for you. Fundamental change, what is needed, and how do we leverage the conference? The floor is yours.
Yeah, hi, Sasha. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Davos in Switzerland. We hope as a Global Commons Alliance to help to take water out of the water bubble, so to say, and present a systems approach. So that means by going beyond the water organizations, beyond the topic of water itself, kind of linking it to climate change, nature loss, and social equality, but also sectors like food, energy, and land use. And we very much want to help by mobilizing business finance as well as policymakers for a transformative water agenda. And, let me just say a bit more about what we want to do at the conference and go straight at it. And that goes through sharing with you who we are, what the Global Commons Alliance is, because I think that will explain why we hope that what we do will be helpful for the UN 2023 Water Conference. We have basically built as an alliance over 100 organizations, specific innovative products, and this is all built on a shared narrative that we basically say that whoever we are, wherever we are, we all share something in common. And those are the interconnected systems that maintain basically the stability and the resiliency of the planet. They basically keep us alive. And these global commons, they range from the Arctic sea ice to the Amazon rainforest, from critical ocean currents to, well, freshwater networks. And so they support the health and life of everything on Earth. And so we really need these global commons to keep thriving because they keep the land fertile, the oceans healthy, our air clean, and our climate stable. But unfortunately, these life support systems are in danger of breaking down. And this is why we formed this alliance, to show how everyone can become an active guardian of the global commons. So we've worked over 3 years on co-created solutions that do exactly that, help us all become guardians of the global commons. And the timing of the UN 2023 Water Conference is as such that most of these innovative solutions or products are coming out. So we're bringing that to the conference, sometimes in finished form, sometimes in prototype. And I don't want to go into details of all of what these amazing alliance of partners have co-created, but it's basically a set of common goods. And now let me just highlight three. One is actually going to be it's a sneak preview, yes, but it's going to be launched tomorrow here at the World Economic Forum on plenary stage. Our co-chairs of the Earth Commission, the Earth Commission is a component of the Global Commons Alliance, is presenting the first kind of safe and just scientific boundaries, Earth system boundaries framework, which is bringing together basically climate and nature includes, of course, water and justice. So that's going to happen tomorrow, and I think the science will be published just in time for the UN 2023 Water Conference. We're translating these safe and just Earth system boundaries into science-based targets, which are becoming the gold standard specifically for companies. So we got science-based targets for climate. We're going to have a version 1 of science-based targets for nature, also in the first quarter in time for the conference. That includes also methods for setting science-based targets for freshwater. And lastly, what I'll mention is, while we're bringing out guidance for what kind of systems shifts we need, and we target specifically investors and policymakers with that. So our offer to the UN 2023 Water Conference is that we want to mobilize corporations, investors, and policymakers for the conference and beyond, and help these actors to transform kind of the water systems by applying a holistic systemic approach and giving them, basically tools that they can use, robust tools, so they don't feel kind of overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of tax, but there's a clear way forward. What we're going to do at the Water Conference, and it's basically I'm calling in from an apartment in Davos, and this morning we hosted a 2-hour design session with Henk Ovink and partners in this apartment from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we co-designed the path all the way to the UN Water Conference. And I wish I could just share a little bit the enthusiasm that was in the room. But what we're all aiming for, what we're aiming for is March 21st, that we have a full day. We're going to deliver on these objectives that I just shared with you. Over to you, Sasha.
No, that's really great. And you have 5 seconds left. But if you have any concrete example for the sectors, because we're looking at water for the SDGs, including for, the economic sectors, the agricultural sectors, the energy sectors. So are your solutions also bringing concrete solutions for preserving water sources, reusing water sources, etc.? That will be interesting. Keep that for our next discussion point. Thank you so much, Patrick, for the great work you're doing. Greetings to Davos. We come back to you in the second round, but let's first go to Monica Altamirano, who is the Director of Climate Impact Water Equity. Monica, I know you have a short PowerPoint to introduce your network and your ideas on the 2 questions I have posted. So who will share the PowerPoint?
I think the organizers, because I sent it, but the why also the
Jasmine, can you share the PowerPoint of Monica, please?
And
sure. Okay, let's. If not, you can share it yourself, Monica. Go ahead.
Okay, I prepare. Okay. So I mean, why I wanted to use some slides is basically also because though I work at Water Equity, today I'm presenting in the name of this game-changing coalition, which actually is very aligned to many of the things that Patrick already presented. So maybe I will be shorter than initially, but basically, which is called Rethinking Collective Action, and investment planning for a water secure world. Maybe just to start, I think, and as we were just talking about Davos, we see that the 2 top risks, right? Of what you say, why do we need a change, or what kind of change? I would start that when we see the two top risks for the next 2 years, which is the cost of the living crisis and the natural disasters and extreme events, and we see the ones moving forward in 10 years, where I think the top 6 are related, no, to how we manage water, or how we manage water can impact those top 6. I mean, it is quite clear from those multiple crises we face, the climate, the water, and the biodiversity one, and the toll they are charging to households and the most vulnerable households, not only in the global south, but in the global north, that the maps we have been using to navigate, right, the planet that we inherit, but also the procedures and premises we have been using to decide on investments and to incentivize economic growth are not working. I would fairly say that most sectors and most actors are coming to that. And like also I think Patrick was mentioning, but because we see the materiality of those effects of the poor management we have done of water resources, for example, many sectors are feeling the materiality of those risks, including the private sector. And we do feel, I think that's the right time, because everyone is asking themselves already, what should be our role? No, should the role of companies be only to make profit, or should they take a much broader societal role? Right? People are also talking about stakeholder capitalism and so forth. But maybe if we go to the next slide, so what we see is that, I mean, now seems to be a right time indeed, no, and there is a window of opportunity and a willingness, and maybe also COVID left us a little bit humble to know and rethink the way we have been doing things. So we see that the timeline to the UN Water Conference is a great timeline to identify those pioneering leaders who are already humble enough to rethink together and collectively the way forward, right? And this is what we are looking at. What do we see as crucial is a cross-sectoral commitment. I think it was said already before, right, that just inside water, we cannot do much. Most of the decisions that influence water are made in other sectors. So we need that cross-sectoral commitment. And we want, in this process of rethinking the way forward, to, first of all, we see like four points of leverage, and that's like defining collective action. What is that clearly, right? Determining the stakeholders' roles and responsibilities, public and private sector being more explicit about why they expect of each other. And once we have done that, we have generated the trust and also a little bit more of the knowledge of the preferences of other actors along a whole investment continuum. That is easier maybe to develop a strategic blend of resources. And when we're talking here about blending of resources, it's not just public-private, but also from different thematic streams, right? When we see the budgets of countries, developing countries especially, there's just not enough budget to deal with the multiple challenges we have. I think we can really, and we need really to go from a siloed budget-dictated planning approach to a much more mission-driven, right? And leverage the power of blended finance. And last but not least, what we want to do in this process of rethinking is also rethink the role of the public spending and procurement, because that's a tool that is often overlooked, no? And its potential to create new markets and new, maybe revenue-generating value chains, but that embody that true worth of water is still missing. So I will tell more about this initiative after, but yeah, we're really excited to be part of the process towards UN Water Conference 2023, and I think it's a crucial time, like it was said before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica, and very interesting indeed how maybe through green procurement and sustainable development water procurement, public institutions can also give incentives for the private sector to do the right thing. So yeah, I think that's really nice. We'll come back to you in the second round for also more ideas about commitments to the Water Action Agenda. But let me now go to our last panelist, last but not least, Temple Ora Eki from the Major Group of Children and Youth. Temple, tell us a bit about your organization, where you're from, and how you see what are the key fundamental changes we need to make, and what can this conference help?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sasha, and greetings everyone from Nigeria. I am Temple, and I'm the director of WashFeed. WashFeed is actually a civil society organization that's promoting sustainable wash services delivery in Nigeria, and member of several youth groups, including the Global Youth Movement for Water, which Elisa has mentioned. So basically, I'm just going to go straight to addressing the questions that my fellow speakers have also talked about. And before I start, I would like to just emphasize that when we talk about water crisis, it's not just a water sector issue. Water crisis is a multi-sector issue. And so we should actually look at addressing it in that manner as a multi-sectoral issue. If we're able to improve our multi-sectoral, and not just the multi-sectoral approach, but the intergenerational generational collaboration in addressing the water crisis we're facing, then we have a headway, because the water sector decision makers actually having the say all the time about what happens in the water sector seem not to be giving us the much needed solution that we need. So because water is a multi-sectoral issue, then we need the voices, we need actions from other sectors apart from the water sector. And that is one of the key changes I really want to see happening this time around. The key decision makers from the health sector, from the environmental sector, from manufacturing sector, education, agricultural sector, talk about every sector you can think about. This is the time for them to start making commitments towards either conserving water, valuing water, and being held accountable for that. And the UN 2023 Water Conference should set that pace for such commitments to happen. And you know, I mean, we say talk is good, yeah, but talk backed with action is actually even better. And so this is where the intergenerational collaboration comes in. The youth needs to start taking their place in decision-making process in the water sector. And I'm glad that collectively the Global Youth Movement for Water is driving that action and placing the youth where we are supposed to be in terms of also taking decisions and not just being relegated to the background. And so it's important that the UN 2023 Water Conference sets the pace as well for this to happen. And just to stress that the UN Water 2023 Conference also offers, it's a leapfrog opportunity, like some of the former speakers have spoken. They mentioned that, I mean, it's a once in a generational event, and there is no better time to actually get this commitment from key decision makers from other sectors. This is the opportunity we have to get them involved in what is happening in the water sector. This is the opportunity we have to get them make commitments, to get them be accountable for also conserving water and valuing water. That is the way I believe we can make progress in the water sector. And so we want to see, I want to see, and likewise the members of the WashFeed team and every other concerned youth in the water sector, we want to see commitments, we want to see pledges, we want to see actions being taken by sector leaders that are not just in the water sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Temple. And I hear you call on the governments and others to make commitments. And I hear you that you should be at the table taking decisions. What I would like to hear more about from you is, what would youth do differently, fundamentally differently? What are you going to decide if you're at the decision-making table? And
Sure.
We will come back to that in the second round. Think about that.
Okay, yeah.
Let me also note that we have a special Google Doc in which people are asking questions for this session. And I would like to highlight a few and give them to our panelists so that you can take them into account when you talk about the last question, which is really what also Temple was already talking about. What are these commitments we need? What are you bringing as commitment? What do you hope others are bringing as commitments? And before I give you again the floor, I'm highlighting a few questions we got from Juliana, Prem, Mark, Colin, Trupti, and Juliana again. So Prem, for example, asks, but sustainable development isn't working for indigenous peoples and local communities whose way of life and livelihood and cultures depend on water resources, and where the value is, not monetary, but it's the basis of their cultures and livelihoods. So how do we take that issue and how do we make sure we respect their rights? Then we also have a question from Trupti from India, Trupti Jain, who says that in the summary report on water action agenda, it is mentioned that in rural areas, water scarcity caused by agriculture increases global freshwater withdrawals. And this is an area which many stakeholders see as a key challenge. And so she asked if the agricultural sector is a cause for scarcity of water, how it suffers for that, and if there are also solutions. Trupti, I know you, and I know that you have solutions on capturing water for water harvesting and reusing it in agriculture. So maybe we should also hear more from you. So these are two questions really on what water means for certain sectors of our economies, agriculture, and also what it means for specific groups such as indigenous peoples. Then we have also questions from Mark and Colin and Julia on the water action agenda. Colin says it's a static tool, he says. What methodologies will be used to allow commitments from different stakeholders to come together to increase the impact of these commitments? How do we make sure we don't make just one commitment now and then it sort of stops? Yeah, how do you make this a living agenda, moving forward agenda? And then I also see that Mark says that the water decade was funded primarily by governments, and budgets were exceeded and the goals were not met. The second water decade was funded more also with private investments. Now, what is the goal for funding the third water decade? So these are some of the questions I give along to you. You don't have to answer all of them. You can, focus on your own commitments. But if you do have some answers to those questions which we received, I would be very pleased. And I'm just going to ask for hands, not the same order. Who would like to comment on what you see as key commitments for the water action agenda and any of the issues you have heard from, you would like to answer from the questions? Elisa, go ahead.
Thank you, Sasha. I actually just wanted to speak a little bit more about the commitment that we're making to the water action agenda. So we spoke a little bit about the global youth movement for water. I just wanted to speak a little bit more about what this is. So we're committing to creating a movement of thousands of youth all over the world that have water at the top of their priority in their own agenda. And they're going to put pressure on their governments at the local, regional, global levels to really make change in their own communities. We're hoping for this movement is already happening. So we already have over 300 youth organizations all over the world that are working together, that we're coordinating action. This is something that we've heard a lot in the past, that youth have not been coordinated and their voice hasn't been presented in a united manner. And this is what the Global Youth Movement is looking to achieve, to really coordinate action amongst youth organizations, but being sensitive to the own realities of youth locally all over the world and connecting the local to the global priorities. We commit to amplifying our actions, to coordinate our actions. We commit to increasing our knowledge and to working alongside all stakeholders to really ensure that the implementation of this water action agenda is inclusive of youth priorities at all levels. And to achieve this, so we have one specific ask that I'm just mentioning today. We'll see how far this goes, but we would love to see a UN Special Youth Envoy on Water appointed alongside the hopefully appointed UN Special Envoy on Water. That will hopefully be one of the main outcomes of this conference. I think this, having two people, one youth representative, and working alongside the UN Special Envoy on Water, I think this could be really a strong collaboration and ensure that this is an intergenerational response, that it is our future that we're speaking about. So hopefully we'll be able to work together to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. So youth movements join together and put on the pressure, and then we can change, make the change we need. Thanks, Elisa. That's great. Neil, you're next.
Thank you, Sasha. I was just going to answer the question about the water action agenda. Is it a static tool, and what's the methodologies for it? Look, I think we can sometimes overthink these, and it wasn't really in the spirit of what the organisers have asked us to do, and they haven't deliberately set up a methodology and a new kind of system, right? Because we have many already, right? And I think they did. That's the right decision. We just have to get on with it ourselves now, and by that I mean, you know, everyone's targets and commitments are going to be a bit different. And Aquafed actually is not going to, I don't think we're going to set any, because we've already made commitments, for example, in the sanitation and water for all partnerships mutual accountability mechanism. We've made commitments in the SWA. So we don't necessarily need to make more. What we will do, I think, is look at others' commitments and look at how we can make those better, because there's going to be multiple opportunities, I think, where we can actually join forces with people. So I think, I don't know, Sultan and someone else who are the organizers, you can slap me down if I'm wrong, right? Or not physically, but, you know, but what I think we're supposed to be doing with these commitments is not worrying about statistical methodologies, but more about taking the essence of what they are saying and use them as an acceleration point for the next 5 years. Yeah. I'll just give you a really good example, a brilliant example, I think, of one that the youth have made. Elisa's mentioned the Global Youth for Water movement one already. I would say also look out for the African Youth Parliament for Water's commitment, which I'm not sure has been published just yet. It may or may not have done, but so I'm not going to give too much away. But they have done, it's a commitment that's well researched, and it's smart, and it is something that is forward looking, right? And it's a real lesson for all of us, let alone, you know, the youth. It's a lesson for all of us in how to make an actionable commitment, and we're going to make sure, because they're with us on the special event that we're working on, and they will have a chance to present it in New York as well. But really look out for the African Youth Parliament for Water commitment, because I think it's fantastic and the best way to do it, I think.
Okay, so you're not giving away yet all the good commitments you know about. This will also be a surprise for March. So keep an eye out for these commitments coming from youth groups such as the African Youth Parliament. Thank you for that, Neil. Temple, you're next.
Okay, thank you very much, Sacha. So talking about commitments, while Sarah from Annie was making her presentation, she made a very important point, which was that laws are how we know that these commitments will be translated into action. And this is where we are coming in, and this is where we are taking action at WASHP. And so what we are doing is to engage parliamentarians who are the key decision makers in terms of making laws that affect the water sector. And so in Nigeria, we are setting up the WASH Parliamentary Caucus, or you can call them Parliamentary WASH Caucus, which comprises of parliamentarians from different political parties, bringing them together to form a caucus that drives action for water in the country. And that is what we are doing, and we've kicked off, and we are going to actually see that this happens in Nigeria, starting with at the subnational level, which we are currently setting up. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Temple. Thank you so much. Monica, Patrick, you all both have 1 minute before we close this session.
Okay, maybe I do want to project one slide because then I can say it in 1 minute quite quickly. But what we are committing, or what we intend with this coalition, I don't know, Jasmine, can you present the slide with the puzzle pieces? So it's basically to create the next one, please. Safe space, to ask ourselves, how can we work more synergetically together? How can we share and use our financial resources and ingenuity to unlock impact, value, and investment at scale? And I mean, to collaborate, to co-invest, to get into collective action is what Neil was saying. It's not about new commitments, but we need to know from each other what are our preferences along the whole investment continuum, right? What are our roles? What do we expect? What do we expect of each other? So what we are doing as a first step is to have sector leads, which are drafting these their guiding principles, their preferences, and the role they feel they should play to get collective action happening. And then the idea over the next month, maybe we go very quickly to the next slide, is to get those pieces together, right? So how do they align? How do the expectation of public and private sector really align? What we want to commit together as a coalition during the conference is not just that we are thinking that this approach and certain changes are needed in our procedures and in our ways to invest and engage with each other, but really then also to commit resources according to those roles we think we should play. We go to the final, and then I think it's clear for everyone how can you engage.
Thank you so much, Monica.
Okay. Maybe when we share the presentation, you see how can you engage, but basically, yeah, we hope you engage the next month with us.
We heard loud and clearly your commitment to invest, so that's wonderful. Finally, Patrick, half a minute.
Yeah, very easy. We commit to help the water sector get in touch with the rest of all the other efforts that are going. We lobbied, there were over 1,000 companies, investors in Montreal. We lobbied for an article that makes disclosure of impacts and dependencies on nature a requirement. We succeeded. So there is a real movement among business and investors to start doing their part in order to address not just fresh water, but all nature issues. And we want to bring that to the UN 2023 Water Conference. And hopefully we don't need another water conference, because we're going to go to all the other places and bring that message and incorporate those at COP16, COP28, and etc. So back to you, Sasha.
Thank you so much. And with this, my job is done. I apologize for going 5 minutes over time. I pass back to Naira, Costa, and the colleagues of the UN. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the participants and the speakers.
Thank you so very much, Sasha, for this amazing moderation, and for the panelists. I really feel that we are approaching the conference with the highest level of energy and commitment, and really solutions oriented. So again, inviting all the participants to use the reaction button to show your love and appreciation to our panelists. We are moving to closing remarks. I see that the special envoy of the President of Tajikistan, Mr. Sultan Ibrahim Soda, is still on the call. So I know we have not discussed this, but I just wanted to check if you would like to say a few words before we go to the closing of the session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Naira. I also would like to thank all the participants for active participation, and especially, of course, our distinguished moderators and the panelists for having such a wonderful discussion around all the questions we discussed. And we took note, basically, the good ideas, initiatives, and the commitments were also mentioned both in chat and during the discussion. Really a very great opportunity for all of us to discuss around this, and the question was around the water action agenda, and as a static tool, as it was mentioned, But I could say that it is not the static one because it's a very living document. So it is already launched in the website. You can register your commitments there. You can do it during the conference and you can do it after the conference. It will be really the living document which will provide us an opportunity to move forward with the outcomes of the conference and then towards end of the decade and then even until 2030. So from my point of understanding and our expectation of the co-host from this conference, so we really want that water should be given a priority in the national, regional and global development strategy and the plans. The second, our understanding and expectation that the water should has its home at the UN. We need that strong UN support for this issue through the different ways, of course. And the most important one, of course, the commitments from the member states, the commitments from the UN entities, financial institutions, international organizations, and from each individual. So which help us really to change our mind, change our approach, and pay our respect to water, which is basically the source of our life. So thank you very much once again for this wonderful discussion. Looking forward also to see you tomorrow with my counterpart, my friend and brother now in water, Henko Wink, will join you tomorrow session, and I will do my best also to be with you tomorrow. Thank you very much, Nayara, also for you and your team for organizing this wonderful webinar.
Thank you so much, Sultan, again for joining us and for staying for the duration. This is really, really appreciated. I know how busy you are on this final days of the planning for the conference. Let me thank all of the participants for joining us again today. It was really, really busy and active, and I again will be asking you to take a look at the webpage for additional information and questions. A huge thanks goes to my colleagues who have been addressing the questions. We received more than 160 questions and more than 120 have been directly addressed. Others were addressed during the panels, and several were already addressed as part of the responses. So we did our utmost to address those questions. We are also planning on bringing some of those that were really repeated or common questions. We'll be flagging them tomorrow as we start the webinar. And we look forward, so, another incentive for you all to join us tomorrow. And tomorrow, the second day, we'll be addressing the themes of the themes 3, 4, and 5 of the interactive dialogues. As mentioned, recordings, PowerPoints, and all related information will be available online. Once again, thank you to all for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. The event is now concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.